Hi, I'm Elaine McSpedon from the Master Gardener class of 2018, and I'm here with two of my friends, and we're going to talk to you today about landscaping your home.
My name is Rachel Glass, and I just want to put out the disclaimer, we are not professionals, but we did take an advanced training class through Texas A&M that took us all 2 years to complete, and we completed it in January.
And I'm Kathy Lovelace, and this is actually my home, and we are going to use it as an example of the process I went through from starting, tore down the old house, built a new house, had a landscaper come out, do a formal design, all the design principles, plus there's a gardening kind of put in with his ideas, and it's kind of a work in progress. And you can see it's not perfect, it's not done, but you can see some of the bones of landscape design and principles that we were taught in our class. This is a picture of the house when my husband was growing up here in the early 1980s. And you can see a lot of the same outbuildings, same traffic patterns as far as the road. That's actually my husband back in high school. But anyway, forward to 2008, this is the back picture of our place. You can see we're out in the country, a working pecan farm, and we do well service as our business. This is the actual home here, and then my garden was back here. Everything stayed where it is, just built new and improved. So just kind of give you some perspective of what you're looking at when we take you outside. And this is my formal landscape plan that the landscape designer did. And based on what I told him, what I would like, what I don't like, he came up with some basic plant list, basic placement of where to put the plants. And this is my garden here, which he had never done a vegetable garden before, that we did it. Our big existing mature trees. The house is right here. The roads, keep them pretty well the same that they are. A lot of this changed, a lot of it stayed the same. A lot of it's still a work in progress. We haven't finished everything yet because I'm doing a lot of planting. But it helped to have it on paper, all my ideas and my thoughts. And then it's layers and layers and layers of landscaping, hardscaping, plant material, surfaces. It's just a lot to think about, a lot to take in, especially when it's your own personal home that you're dealing with. I would say, as advice, like I said, we are not professionals. You ask 5 different landscape people and you will get 5 different plans and 5 different ideas. These are just some examples of, yes, I had the master plan that he presented me one day. I had to digest all this and think about all this. So I went to a printing place and got the different parts of this blown up bigger. And then I made overlays with the paper of what he had versus what I envisioned, what I wanted, what I changed. So when we had to do the ordering of the plants, I had a plant list already ready to go, which was similar to what he had, but different. So there again, layers and layers, lots of thoughts. And I was doing a whole yard, front and back, in a vegetable garden. So start small, focus on the main area, whether it's your entrance or whatever it is, or you will be overwhelmed.
So did you keep like a list on the computer? You kept a notebook of different things?
I had files that I kept, and then I discovered on my phone, thanks to Elaine, the app called Notes, and I would take pictures, and I kept a lot of things filed in there because I always had my phone with me, and when I was talking to the builder or the landscape designer or going to a nursery or wherever I was gathering ideas and writing down notes, I always had that in my phone. So I had hard copy, and I had digital.
Okay.
It's layers. It's a lot. And when it's your personal place, I could go design your house and just walk, park, and just do whatever. But when it's yours, you take ownership of it. It's a little bit different. Over all my years of gardening is paying attention to your neighbors' yards. When you're driving through town, if you see a plant or something that grabs your interest, find out what it is. Because chances are it's probably native or well adapted and it likes being here. Everybody has different preferences. Everybody has different styles. Just because it looks good in one person's yard may not mean something you want, but it gives you ideas. Go to display gardens, go to nurseries. I don't think we can really name specific places, but we can say the extension office where we take our classes at. Also books, magazines, This is just a sampling of some of the books that I've had over the years. Whether it is antique roses, I love my antique roses. Is it vegetable gardening, which my vegetable garden is a big part of my yard.
One of the magazines that we use is the Texas Gardener.
Texas Gardener magazine, that's very good if you do vegetable gardening. Let's say, for instance, you're trying to do wildlife, which is something I'm very big on in my garden. Here's one, Butterfly Gardening for Texas. Specifically get books that are for your area. Another one that I would definitely recommend for anybody, whether you're a beginner or experienced, is this one here. It's put out by the city of Austin. There's different copies, different editions of it, but it is very good information on native and well-adapted plants for Texas. Very easy to use. They have charts that you can figure out the information, light requirements, water requirements, when it blooms, all those information. Very easy to use, very user-friendly. Highly recommend this.
And we
publication.
usually sell these at our plant sales. I know we don't have one. We'll be getting one in the spring, I believe, if everything goes well. And you can also get it online from the city of Austin. It's
Yes,
a great
It's
resource.
actually free online.
You can download it. Speaking of online, lots of information online. Beware, not everything on the internet is true. May not be specific to you, but get ideas from Pinterest or Houzz or different sites on looks that you like. Do you like a more modern style? Do you like a more rustic style? It's up to you.
We've also looked at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, and they have a great website that you can sort and look and put in what you're looking for. If you need something in the shade, or if you're looking for a certain color or time of year that you want it to bloom. Other things that we talked about: Pinterest, Facebook, Houzz. One of the things you put down, Kathy, was memories of plants from your past, from your grandmother's garden and stuff.
Yes, I have some plants in the garden that we had before we built the house. For example, Old Blush Antique Rose. It was my granny that my mom has the original plant. I took cuttings from that one. That's one that I know I definitely wanted. Pass along plants that you can get from other people that sometimes you can get them in commerce or buy them at the nursery. Sometimes you can't. So those kind of things, we all probably growing up, if you were in Texas, you've done honeysuckle and you pull the little stamen out and you get the little sweet nectar, and so things like that.
And then once you got all these ideas, especially with the garden this size, what did you do with them? How did you organize them?
That's the hard part. That's the layers and layers. Think about form follows function. What are you going to use your different parts of your yard for? Whether it's for play area for your children, maybe a place to put the not so wonderful things like your trash cans or gardening tools, a place for barbecuing, gathering outside, all those things. When you're doing your basic design, it doesn't have to be a professional. It could just be big bubbles of different uses, and then think about what plant material or what hardscape do I want to define those areas. Functions. For instance, in my particular home, we have a front entrance and we have a back entrance because we're out in the country. We have a gathering and eating areas in the front and in the back and on the side. I have a lot of porches. Play area for the children. My kids are grown now, but we still have a swing set that my daughter got when she was 16. If you have dogs, you'll see the area that we put our dogs in. Do they roam free and wild like mine do mostly, or do you have a little area for them? Consider how they're gonna move with the family. Parking, you'll see parking in the front. We have parking in the back. If you're in a city suburban lot, you may just have street parking. Just think about parking. Utility and service areas, that's what I talked about before. Trash cans, your tools, maybe compost pile. All those things that nobody really wants to see but you need. Where is that going to live at? What's that going to look like? How are you going to move to that area? If you have to take your trash can to the curb for the trash man, or I have to take mine back to the back for the guys to take off, that's, think about those kind of things. Special areas. Mine was a veggie garden. Yours might be a place for maybe water. Maybe you have a pool. Different people have different things. Another thing to think about is your sight lines from what you see inside your house when you're looking outside into your yard. Do you want to see your hummingbird feeder? Do you want to see your bird bath? In our old house, the kitchen window overlooked the garden, and what we call the service entrance, where my husband and son and guys that work for us, when they come in, I like to know what they're doing. People come in for deliveries, so that's a sight line to look out my kitchen window and see my vegetable garden. That makes me very happy.
Sightline number 2. We're now looking out the front window from the dining room out to the front entrance.
Overlooking the, there's no out there, but there's a horse pasture that's belongs to our neighbor that I get to enjoy seeing her horses and their miniature cattle. And I can see all my landscaping. I planted Turk's cap here on purpose, so I have hummingbirds right at my dining room table.
Gail's house with the white mist.
gorgeous.
So this is sightline number 3. Tell where it's from.
This is from the master bathroom. This is actually my dressing area, and I did this on purpose. It's a casement window so I can open it. I have the screen off right now, but you can open it and get ventilation. And also I can see the windmill, which has been on the place forever. And then a real narrow, the stone columns, the plants I keep there. And it overlooks the orchard. And in the wintertime, the trees are bare, so I can see all the way down to my in-laws' house. Just a nice view, very calming.
Back to the sitting area. Tell where we are.
Okay, this is a sitting and gathering area under our big oak trees. We have 2 of these areas. This one is used the most, and back behind us, if you want to pan back behind us, Rachel, there's another area that's more like a woodland setting, more of a rustic, that we will eventually have picnic table or maybe even a stone bench. But right now, with the big oak trees, and there's a post oak, and then there's an oak and a pecan tree, it's so dense in the shade that the grass doesn't grow anyway. So I quit fighting it and just put hardwood mulch, and I'm going to put some more plantings around the base of the trees.
And what did you put at the base of this big oak tree where you sit, or 2 oak trees?
Now at the base of this oak tree is decomposed granite. They put a cloth underneath it, which just for stability, and then put the decomposed granite on top of it. Still get weeds, don't, it doesn't not fail proof, but it does help a whole lot in just having a nice area to walk on. Even when it rains, it's not muddy. You can always go out there year round, 24/7. It's very serviceable. This is the back of the house, and we brought the stone edging around just like we had the front for that continuity, curves again. I am not finished planting here by any means. We put down the rock, quote, riverbed, because there's a valley coming off the house that a lot of water comes off those. That's kind of like erosion control. Haven't decided where Lacey's standing at, what I want to plant there yet. Another sitting area that looks out into the sitting area under the trees. And that's really...
Kathy, let's talk about though the progression for planting. So you put in, the first thing you want to put in is your shrubs and trees, correct?
If that's what you... Back here, I didn't know exactly what I wanted. I knew I wanted a mountain laurel, and I will lend this one up a little bit. I knew I wanted something against the house. Those Texas sages probably are not going to stay there because they just kind of blend in, and I'm not sure I like that. Back here, I was going to put Greek myrtle, and they did not have any at the nursery at the time that we did the landscaping in the hot of July, so I just didn't put anything at all. So nothing wrong with living with your space. You'll see several things out in my garden. I buy a plant, I set it there in the pot, and I decide if I like it or not. Things get moved, change things out around. So yes, have a plan for what you're planting, but be flexible and give yourself some, I don't know, designer's discretion to change and do whatever feels good to you. Hang on, we'll start there, and then
We're
you can
recording.
just pan over. Okay, this is an example of a dog area. We live in the country. Our dogs are not pinned up. They have a dog porch they sleep on. They have a dog door that they can come and go at will. But at nighttime, because we have coyotes around here, we do pin them up. So I have a gate that I can shut, and they're confined to a pen, but in the morning time, they get to get out and play.
Can you talk for a minute about the choice of materials for the gate that you use for the
Yes,
fence?
along with rock, I did a lot. I like wrought iron. I like a lot of metal. So I found this online, and our builder actually did the welding, and this fence coordinates with the fence out by the service entrance.
And isn't this a cemetery fence?
This wrought iron, and then I have some cemetery wire fencing all around my vegetable garden. Okay, this is our outdoor cooking area that is still a work in progress. And then the carport. Then the planting that I did around it just kind of evolved because this was my husband's afterthought to do this fire pit that we don't have a fire grill yet, but he wanted a fire pit. So that's what the stone hinge right now is what it is. But eventually we'll have Adirondack chairs and have a sitting area out there. But the sidewalk that became the Y sidewalk. And then I just put Salvia greggii in there. They did great. But we did rosemary, and as you can see, it did not like the summertime. Between the very, very hot and the drip hose, I don't think kept the root ball dry enough. I mean, wet enough. I think it got too dry, or it got too wet. I'm not sure. But anyway, they will be replanted. Then, on the two service areas, we have electrical panel and irrigation panel. And then we have electrical box over here that needed a little softening. So I did bicolored irises because they're just a good hardy plant. Put some stones there because when my husband comes or I come to do the irrigation, everything gets stepped on. Eventually we will put some stone edging in lieu of the metal edging. We just did that for right now because we had to get the sod down. The electrical box is over here. Had to be something that could be withstand workmen if they have to come in there, and they don't do it very often. If they come and service something or have to check something, if it's a rose bush, it's prickly or it breaks. I have some Gulf muleys that are just started blooming, some red yuccas, and then some rosemaries. Very hardy and very tough. We're doing the reconstruction, the remodel of the yard. There was a whole line where you see this curvature of this stone fence or wall, and then the fencing was all ligustrums, which I don't know if you know what those are. They are a well-adapted plant, but they are horribly invasive. They are evergreen. They had the blueberries on them, and I wanted them gone. So contractor took them all out, and then it was like, oh, what do we do? So we built a wall. We followed that curvature that we had originally that divides the yard from our well service equipment. And along that formed barrier or that border, I went ahead and planted a butterfly garden. So I did the blue mist flower, white sage, they're just starting to bloom, and they're little bitty babies, so they're not very big right now. Or not white sage, a white mist flower. I have some milkweed in there. I have some dill, some fennel, abelia, just different plant material. And then I don't know what's going to go over there by the greenhouse, but we're working on that. Okay, this is a swing set that survived the remodel. My husband and father-in-law did this for my daughter when she was 16. She's now 28. Just a really good, big, heavy, stout swing set. And we don't have grandchildren, but when neighbors come over or friends, adults and children both like to sit on those swings and swing. So just you can have more play equipment out here, just another area for children.
Now tell us about your shed and your greenhouse area.
This is my garden shed, I call it my garden house. We had an outbuilding here before, and we tore it down and just built on the same 10 by 10 slab and then added a porch to it. So it's my little play area. I wanted a greenhouse to put my tomato plants mainly in the springtime because I was bringing them in a wagon back and forth out of our meat house that we process meat in every night and every morning. And I just wanted a greenhouse so I didn't have to do that.
Now you mixed old and new in designing this house.
Yes, and I had the flower beds all ready to go. The same hardscape that you've seen before, the decomposed granite, the stone edging. You can see I have compost to be turned in. This will be a cottage garden, roses, perennials, butterfly plants. There's going to be a water feature where you see that circle for the dogs and for the butterflies and for the birds, moving water. Okay, this is my greenhouse. Before we did the remodel, I had a garden shed that had greenhouse material on it, but it wasn't a greenhouse proper. So our builder actually built this, and then he rocked in, or actually redid the whole garden shed storage area, and then did me a place in the back to store all my tools and my potting shed, or my potting bench and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of made this up as I went along. And I'll take you on a little tour. Oh, the doorknob's gonna come off.
You're going to use the greenhouse for?
This is where I'm going to put my, I don't have a lot of pot or winter plants, But I will keep my tomato plants here in the springtime, and I'm thinking I'm gonna put more in here than what I think I am. But I have a place to water. Starting seeds and things like that I will do on the sun porch on a, bench with lights on it. But this is just an area. I keep my tools here, keep my gloves here. This is the inside storage area.
Oh, and your tools are in a pot?
Sand.
Yes, that is got sand that has oil in it. So every time you put them in there, they get sharpened and they stay nice and, oil. They don't get rusty.
And use motor oil, correct?
Just motor oil. This is the inside. I love yellow and blue, and I love pigs. If you haven't seen any of that, which you will some in the garden. I'm not finishing here either. I'm gonna have another table here, irrigation, things for our cattle, for worming and things, staying here. I just haven't gone around to this. This was a shelf that's gonna get seeds put on it for display. It was a kind of a hand-me-down from the boo-boo from the pantry in the house. Lots more to do, lots more decorating, but right now I'm working on the outside. This door leads to the back area, which is the sink and the potting table and all my various and assorted things you need to play gardening with. The tiller is not mine. I haven't tilled in probably, 20 years. We did when we first started, but that's the landscaper's tiller. He hadn't come and got it yet.
So you practice no-till gardening?
No-till gardening, yes ma'am. Keep everything mulched all the time.
So you just keep adding to it each year?
Yes, and you'll see when you see the garden here in a minute. When I started, we came back here in 1993. My father-in-law would just do a box tiller, similar to what Marjorie Gilmaster talked about on her presentation. The old way, box till everything, and just row plant it. Compaction, mud, and when he was through, he tilled it all up, and you have the weeds. It just made me crazy. So I went in and did rock borders and added lots and lots of mulch and compost.
I like how you've got rock for your flooring.
Okay, yeah, and this is sewer rock is what they call it. They use it for, it drains really well, and it looks pretty good.
It looks
Until
great.
your dogs get into your mulch, you break it open because they're looking for a lizard.
We're into the vegetable garden, and this has changed a bit from when we were last here. And tell us about how you made the decisions for the different heights and your purpose and function of this garden.
Well, to start with, the landscaper asked me what I wanted, and I said I just want it easier to maintain. When originally I had this, I have the perimeter all the way around, and the rock wall you see is original Tom's Dad built that. That all was here. I've had it before, but I wanted my perennials to stay, all my pollinator plants, all that is the perimeter. I wanted the center to be my vegetable garden when I put some flowers in there with it. But it used to be flat culture, meaning it was flat. It had one level of stone around it, and I had to maintain pathways and planting rows, both. A lot of work. It took a lot of material. It was the same length that you see between the two planters, but it's one continuous row, two great big planting ovals. Took a huge amount of material, a huge amount of time. So I told the guys that were doing the rock work, I want a raised bed. I wanted 4 of them, and then 2 of them I want to be flat for the tall plants like tomatoes and okra that you see now. Otherwise I won't be able to reach them. So now all I am maintaining is planting area. So this is all for planting in. I don't walk on it. My dogs do, but I don't. If I do have to get in there to do any turning, I can get up on my big rocks at the end and walk in there. But this is my old garden soil that we took out of the old beds and put into it. So it's very, very pliable. I would say it's basically like chocolate cake. This is ground up leaves that I'm using for mulch. And below it, you can see my soil. It's just wonderful, and it stays like that. It's just great. So I'm very pleased with that. I have irrigation, drip irrigation, which I had before, but now I have it on timers, and I have an actual system that I can go over there and turn it on, and I can have all 6 of my beds watered at one time without me having to do anything. So that is much, much less maintenance.
So are you done with your vegetable planting, or what else are you?
I have not planted. I put the calendula. I'm gonna go ahead and plant those. I'm just deciding if I want it. But no, I have some plants, some transplants put out. But I'm gonna do direct seeding of spinach and beets and probably carrots. And then when my black-eyed peas come out of production, I will put a cover crop in there. And I'm not sure what I'm gonna do in bed number 1 over there. But when the plants come out, then I will intentionally put some more compost on there, work it in just a little bit, and then sheet compost with more leaves that I have back in the back area.
Now, can you tell us about the perennial garden? I know we've all benefited from your perennial garden as you thin it out at times and share with us.
So all of this is perennial.
The whole border of the whole vegetable garden is all perennials.
So what do you
And
have
I
here?
have, I went ahead and pulled up all the irrigation. Normally it was under the mulch, but I pulled it all up because the landscapers don't know how many plants I'm still gonna put in, so I need more irrigation, which this is very easy to work with. So that's why I'm so busy this fall doing all this planting, which I have a lot more to do, and then I will put another thin layer of mulch down to cover up the hoses where you won't see those. Try to keep year-round color. That is, as you learn your plants, it's a tricky thing to do. It's not always, you don't always have everything going all the time, but you want bloomers, and then when they stop blooming, try to have something come back in season. Try to have the butterfly plants ready for when the butterflies come through. Have the hummingbird plants ready when the hummingbirds come through. All those kind of things to think about. Plus, just what do you like to see?
Now tell us when do you thin this out?
Oh, those are my cannas. They're very, very prolific, and I got the landscape guys to actually put me some barriers for them so that they don't escape and go and take over and eat my roses and things like that before they've done. So that's just cannas, very easy to maintain. This is a Jerusalem sage right here. It's just starting to, it blooms really, really profusely in the spring. Just get a few fall blooms. That is one plant that has gotten huge. It will last several years, and then it'll finally die out. You plant another one. I've had another one before in another location. So just know that it's not you, just plants. You have to know your plants.
And do you trim that back?
Not really. You could, but I don't. I just let it go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when do you thin these out, your cannas?
Cannas, I do that in the early spring. I'll thin them out. My phlox this year they didn't get the water. They just looked horrible. They usually, I don't know if they're, I don't know. I've given some away, so I might be asking some of you to give them back. But they'll come back and revive. But my dogs have dug them up. There was an armadillo hole that started populating right there in the corner. So one thing after another.
And then, is this an antique rose?
That is antique. That is, I've heard it called Doucher. I've heard it called Doucet. One of my favorites. I have 3 more of that. Well, 2 of them in the front we planted, and I got 1 more to plant. Very, very pretty rose, very fragrant. Blooms a lot. And this is my helper. This is what you deal with if you have dogs. They just go and do what they want. That's Gus.
Hey, Gus.
He's looking for a lizard or something. Yes, he helps a lot.
All right, and then what do you have here, Kathy?
This is sage, just culinary sage. That my mom gave me years ago, and it just multiplies when it will peg or it will root when it hits the ground. And it gets too much water, sometimes it will die out, but it's just good old culinary sage. I just throw a salvia gregia back there several years ago, and it looks kind of, just kind of loosey-goosey back in
And
there.
we've seen, you've repeated that throughout the
Yes.
house, so you have some nice consistency. And then what's this?
That is old blush that was from my granny's house in Hempstead that I took a cutting from, and that's an old blush also. But I cut it back a little bit more than this one, but same from my granny's house. Mexican bush sage, I had one years ago and it died out. I just found another one at Natural Gardener, so I bought another one and put it there. And it will get established to do really, really well with the Esperanza that blooms all summer long. And these are drift roses. The first time I tried those, I thought, you know what, I'll try them and see. They've just been planted about 2 weeks ago. They're going through kind of, where am I, what am I doing? And then they'll get a really good establishment, and by springtime they'll be wonderful. These are my statues I've had for a long time. This is my daughter Callie and my son Garrett, which they're actually living and breathing adult children now. She's 28 and he's 26, but I always call it Garrett and Callie. And those came from Miss Elkins Nursery. If anybody, longtime gardeners, will remember Miss Elkins Nursery. So.
And this is the cemetery wire
This is
fence
cemetery
that you were
wire.
talking about?
And I had to order that online, but we had some other wire there. I kept the old pipe fencing that my in-laws and husband and brother-in-law built many years ago, but we put the new wire on there to give it that look I wanted. I had an opening put in because we'd always, the guys would walk across and climb over the fence to go. We do a lot of our own meat processing and fish cleaning table there, and they were always walking through there. So I thought, you know what, why beat them? Don't just join in, and I put a walkway. Once I get those on the landscape, so we'll have a walkway to go through.
And that was one of the principles that they really stressed in the landscaping, was to make sure you have your pathways built in.
Yes, because people are going to go the shortest path that they can go, and the animals, that's just what people do.
Okay, what do you
this
have
is
here?
Lamacanthus. This was here originally. Everything else was taken out. I had a huge stand of Mexican Ruelia, the blue one. It's about this tall. It took over everywhere. I told them to dig it all out, and they're like, dig it? I said, yes, I want it gone. They dug it all out for me. Would have took me weeks of back-breaking work. They did it with a skid steer and just took it out. This is a drip irrigation system, and it is on a timer, and it's on a system. But it's basically like doing Tinker Toys or Lincoln Logs. It's just compression fittings. This is the T. This is just the hose that you just cut it with little cutters, and you literally push it together, and you build it whatever you want. If I want to come in here, put something here, I'd snip that, add a T, snip that, add a T. You got more extension. Very, very easy to work with. Anybody can do this. Before I had this on an automatic system, I had the faucets that my husband put in, and I just hooked them with a water hose or the actual irrigation tube itself. So anybody can do the drip irrigation. It's very simple.
And you even brought up, like, if you get a hole in one, or one gets damaged, you can put a connector in it too.
You can put a splice, you cut it and put a splice in there, or you can put a goof plug, they call it, and put that in there. It's very forgiving. So you will hit it with a spading fork, I guarantee you. That's why I pulled all mine up so I could see it. So I'm planning, I wouldn't punch it any more than I had to. And then once it's put in, you cover it with mulch, so it's very efficient as far as water usage. And all the water goes into the ground. It doesn't evaporate out.
There's a little hole every foot.
There's an emitter every foot. There's different types, different amounts, but there's an emitter every foot on this particular one. I don't remember the gallon per minute, the GPM, but I run it about 2 hours. This is another bed that I kept these low for my taller plants, my okra, my tomatoes, those kind of things. Also, if I want to put some cattle panels and have some climbing, like peas or something like that, you could do that. But something that you can manage yourself. The higher beds are great, like black-eyed peas I planted. If those weren't out in a planter high, you'd be leaning over and bending your back trying to pick the peas. That is good here. Okra in that bed will not be so good because I have to bring them down to pick it down. And if they're in a higher bed, it'd been really, really hard. So I thought that through. These are some old rings from a well that we had on the place. We have several of them. I just had that landscaper put it there so I could put some, plant material. This is a cross-straight rosemary I just planted a couple weeks ago. And here's another example of some irrigation. Comes off of the tubing, and it's just a little emitter for hard to reach places. They're pot plants, so that's what this is for.
Kathy, when you talked about that you run this for 2 hours, how often do you run that?
I don't have it set on a timer. It's up to me whenever I think they need it.
Okay.
I'm lying to you. Let me back up on that. The 6 vegetable beds, I just do that manually. I go over there and I know what to punch and make it come on and off. So we don't have that on a timer. We can do that, but I told him right now, since I'm learning how I like my system. That I don't know. This I have it set, I think, for once a week now. This comes on in the morning, and I don't even have to think about it. And I know my plants well enough I can kind of watch and tell if they're getting enough water, or do the good old pull the mulch back, stick your finger in there, or get a water meter. Different ways you can check. But once you work with your landscape long enough, you'll pretty well learn. Your plants will tell you what they need and don't need. And you'll get several plants. One of them is a sage that I have over there at the tree that's not going to stay there. He is a very, very water thirsty. It's a limelight sage. And that's one of the ones that if you put him out here in the full sun, in the hot afternoon, he will wilt and tell you he needs more water. For him, he does the other one. So that's where I might give him one of these, just for him and not everybody else. So it's just kind of a trial
So your
and error.
plants talk to you.
Pretty much, kind of, yes. I talked to them.
And I think one of the things that we didn't cover is lighting in the garden, and that was one of the that you want to consider when you're putting in your garden, if you want it.
Yes.
If you want to add additional lighting to it, and when you're planning it out.
I actually have landscape lighting. We have 2 over there on the sitting area. We call it Stonehenge, but there's 2 lights, and they are wired in with the irrigation system. They come on at 9 o'clock at night. And you'll see, if walking around, you might notice there's some wires by the trees. Landscapers are gonna come back and put a few more lights in there. I don't want a lot of lighting, but some night lights on my trees. But out here, I didn't really want that. I'll probably just do some solar lights. But I don't really come out here at nighttime, although I have been guilty in the summertime of coming out with a headlamp and working at nighttime because it's so hot during the day. And on those moonlight nights, you can almost see out here. So I have been that person. But yes, lighting gives ambiance at night. This is my compost bin or pile, I guess you'd call it. There's my old wire off my fence. I'm gonna use that to put some leaves in this fall. But anyway, kitchen scraps go into the compost pile. Anything's fair game as long as it's not diseased. I don't put meat in there, although it would probably break down. The ants would eat it, but I have 2 dogs that would love to get in there, and they do, and make a mess out of it. That's why I keep a screen over it, kind of keep the dogs out. Shredded
you put paper in there.
Paper, anything, any kind of, the carbon and the green. I just mix a lot of things in there.
Okay.
I don't add water like I should. I don't turn it like I should. I can't make enough compost for my garden.
And so when do you take it out?
About once a year in the springtime, my son or I will get the John Deere tractor and get the bucket and move these bricks out of the way, and we just scoop it up, put it in the back of our club car, which is like my utility truck, and drive into the garden. That's one of my pathways in the garden. We didn't talk about that. That was part of my design on the garden, was they had the wide pathways so that I could drive in there with materials and work it easily. There's some compost here kind of coming out at the bottom. It just does its own thing.
Once a year you'll take off, if it's not composted on the top,
Then
you'll take that off.
I usually move these bricks over to here, and I'll put that back here and start another compost pile.
Okay.
So I don't do it as intensely as I should or could, but it just takes too much effort and time. This was a bunch of leaves. I always pick up leaves. Mike Butch is really good about calling me, and just different people, and when I stop and see it, I just pick them up. I don't need to do that as much as I used to now because I'm not sheet composting as much, as my beds have been redone. A lot more easy to manage. I won't need near the amount of leaves, which is fine with me. But this year I did put these all out and ran over with a mower, and then what I don't need right now, I just put on some plastic. So that is just shredded leaves ready to be used, and more leaves in the bags. And then the rest of my mushroom compost that was left from the landscaping, I had him bring me an extra load, and that's what that is. I can just come get mushroom compost when I need it.
All right, so talk about that process too. When do you do you mulch twice a year?
I usually add compost about twice a year when the seasons change. When I'm doing my fall planting, I'll put some more compost, and when I'm doing my spring planting, I'll put some more compost in there to replenish what the plants have taken out. And then I will do my mulching also at that time. So you have to have a plan in place, or you get out of control plants.
And we know there's some honeysuckle that's invasive and you don't want to do
Yeah,
it.
that is not Japanese honeysuckle. That one's not invasive. These are some cranium lilies or milk and wine lilies from my husband's grandparents' place in Florida. This is kind of my Florida garden. Some ginger from his grandmother's house. The crepe myrtle I just did because it's a miniature, but it's a white crepe myrtle. Kind of looks like, the South. Oakley's hydrangea I just put there. That will have pretty fall color. And then it has white pinnacles in the springtime. This has been in a pot with me for about 2 years. I just planted it. There is a forsythia sage that I got out of Reed Lewis's yard. If y'all know Reed Lewis, that had sweetbriar years ago. And it's actually blooming yellow right now. This is some coral vine that some nice lady named Rachel Glass planted and gave to me. So this is going to go in my greenhouse and overwinter. So in the springtime, it'll be going great guns. And it's going to go on the fence over there. And it actually has a pink bloom. I hadn't noticed that. It's actually blooming.
You'll see it at my house tomorrow,
Yeah.
and it is blooming profusely.
Oh, good.
And the bees are just
All over it. That's why I want it, because it's a bee plant.
All right, and then what do you have coming up on the
This
horizon?
is a Salvia gregia, but it's a different variety. It's a Prince something. I've had it for years. And this was one of my original plants that got to stay. and I moved my beds out 2 foot. And this morning I walked by, this is my route to go to a well service office, and it sounded like it was a lot. It was just buzzing. It just had pollinators all over it. Antique rose I've had for a while. It's a Pearl d'Or. I made a trip to the Antique Rose Emporium, and I bought 9 other roses, so you can see those in pots that are going to go on the ground. Eventually, I have kind of a vision. That's a Caldwell Pink. It's a baby, and he got transplanted this summer, and he's still pouting, but he will be glorious once he gets over that. Just lots of perennials, smell good, evergreen, blooming, something
what are
always in
these?
business.
What is this one?
That is a dwarf Buddleia, or a butterfly bush. I didn't know they came in dwarfs, so we'll see how that does. Only 2 by 2, so the great big one.
What is this?
That is my pig bench.
Magnificent statuary.
I love pigs. I don't know why.
He's so cute.
Something we didn't talk about. I'll have more roses behind me, and then I'll have a cut garden area. I went ahead and made an area specifically for cut flowers to kind of contain myself. Meaning zinnias usually in the summer, cosmos in the summer. Then I will put some a larkspur out there. You know, different things for fall. I'll probably put a cattle panel, do some sweet peas. Old blush. I just want to see if it does as good as my granny's. I love old blush. That's one of the tried and true, very old garden plants. This is Souvenir de la Machion. Is a very pretty. I think it's suburban. I don't remember the class of it, but it's a very pretty one. Some old dianthus that somebody's breathing on it. Those are just good. Smell them good. If we had smelly vision, you could smell the dianthus in the stalks. That's Gus. He's a ham. Resident garden dog. This is the rosemary. Let me get Rachel away from the dog. That I gave to my mom. It's called ARP, A-R-P, from ARP, Texas, in the North Texas, because it can take the cold. I had one for years. It finally died out, as y'all know they do. And anyway, I gave some to Mom, and then I got some of her start and started me another one.
There are bees all over your terse cap.
Yes, all hours of the day and night. Well, not nighttime, but. And y'all remember Diane? The one lives around. This is a sparkler sage. I was thrilled to find those.
Okay, so we want to, that concludes our tour. And we want to thank Kathy for sharing her home with us and her
Very welcome.
knowledge. And tell us just roughly, I know this has been a work in progress, how long, when would you say you actually planted these gardens, or when did you start on the gardens and the
We
beds?
actually started on the veggie garden probably in May. Is when we actually took everything out and then put it back, and did all the hardscape and put it back in, and the same way with the landscaping around the house. So it hasn't been in very long.
Okay, so we've seen the progress that you've made just since May, and we'll come back in a year and
Welcome
check
to
up
have
on
you
it.
come back. Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And just, we didn't want to overwhelm you with too much knowledge and information, but just think of it as layers and layers and layers, and take your time and make it your own. Enjoy it.
Thank you.